I am Lori Francis and worked for years in a federally qualified health center in South Central Montana, and just recently joined the Oregon Primary Care Association. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of National Health Service Corps scholars and loan repairs, and have enjoyed that immensely. And I will show you a few photos during this slideshow, some people who came to us through the National Health Service Corps. I'll begin the presentation with sort of a number of concept and philosophic slides, as well as the objectives, and then move into some more specific nitty-gritty tools that any of you can use to help team functioning immensely. So these are the objectives for today. I think you probably already received these. I'll be sharing with you the hallmarks of highly effective teams, and again, in conceptual form first and later very specifically, and then also providing tools that will allow you to strengthen any team that you're currently serving on. As you probably know well, and each of you I'm sure have served on many teams, from whether it was a high school group trying to get a project turned in, or a sports team, or now as a provider working with your gang to deliver great patient care, it always helps to have clear goals, and objectives for your team, and we'll discuss that soon. Members that participate, that are involved in the decision-making process, a way of making decisions that everybody understands, agreements with how you regarding how you will function as a team, and again, I have a tool to help you with that. And a way to evaluate your teamwork, both the process work, which is about getting along, and the relationships of the group, and also the tasks, the goals you're trying to accomplish. This is just a list of things that we all know, I believe, at least intuitively, about what allows teams to function well or poorly. And something you'll hear often is the need for management support. So depending on where you guys are currently working, or whether you're in school, if you are allowed, given, offered time to meet with your group, that is a clear sign of management support. Further, if the work that you're trying to do is related to what the organization is trying to accomplish, again, that is in line with management or leadership support. If your leadership doesn't allow you time to meet, clearly that creates problems, and it's worth sharing your challenges with your leadership to let them know that you can't accomplish your goals unless you have time to get together. How much time groups need to meet is always up for debate, and especially with providers, because they are so integral in the patient care and visit. Often it's a struggle between time to see patients and time to meet with your gang and come up with new ideas of how to improve systems. And that takes us to the penalties for productivity, for loss of productivity. Often when people enter the workforce who are providers, doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs, dentists, there is a tension between staying online and seeing patients and having time to work together. And that's something that lives in healthcare all the time, and it has to be navigated repeatedly. There's on the right side of the slide, it says, make sure you keep your leadership informed, or that if you don't, that's a problem. And that's absolutely true. As you work on your new ideas and plans for system redesign, new ways to see patients, new ways to work together, it's really important to keep your leadership informed so that they are not unpleasantly surprised by some change that you have decided to initiate. And then that list of unhelpful behaviors, unfortunately, I think most of us have experienced one or two of those in groups that we've worked with. And toward the end of today, I will share with you a tool that helps discuss some of those behaviors in a transparent, fairly safe way, and helps you resolve those. So if you're on a team that has a person dominating, or a lot of sarcasm, things like that, this tool will help you move forward. There is a concept called group self-efficacy. It's a field that's been well studied. Not unlike personal self-efficacy, or the ability to believe that you're able to accomplish things that you set out to do. Groups are the same way. they learn that they are either successful groups and can do what they want to do, can make changes in their professional life in this case, or they have some setbacks early on, not unlike individuals, and start to believe that they are not capable. So it's really important as you work with your group, think about where you are in your group formation. If you've been doing this for a while and your group is a successful group, according to your definition, which is really all that matters on this, then great. If you're starting a team or on a team that does not have any experience yet or has had a couple of, quote, failures, it's good to step back, think about a project or a small step you all can take that will help you feel like you actually accomplished something. And one way to gauge that is that the first small bullet, it says, in order to foster a high degree of can-do-ness, evaluate your confidence in succeeding in your activities. So for instance, if you say, let's create a new way of working with patients, and you would ask the team, the group members, how confident they are that we can accomplish that. And if the members of your team are not at a level of 7 or greater, 10 being very, very confident, then you'd probably want to step back and say, okay, if we're only at a 6 or a 5 on average, what smaller step could we take? Perhaps it's redesigning the paperwork for the visit, it's redesigning what happens at the front desk, one step at a time. Break it down into smaller pieces until you feel confident that you can achieve that. So that's the way to foster high levels of group self-efficacy. And then groups like that tend to be able to take on larger and larger projects once they feel good about their abilities. Also, the bottom bullet is, are you comfortable experimenting? Some of you may be familiar with the term PDSA, here used as a verb. It is the P stands for plan, D is for do, S is for study, and A is for act, which is a little confusing, but what it means is try something. So if you want to redesign the paperwork, try a new piece of paper. Just test it with a good enough idea. It doesn't have to be a perfect idea. See if it works. If it didn't work, then redesign it. So that's just experimentation, sort of the scientific method that I'm sure all of you know at some level. And an important thing to remember as you do that is that if it didn't work, if a piece of paper didn't work, if the new visit design didn't work, that's just learning, not failure. It's testing an idea, learning from your test, and moving forward. In just a bit, I'll show you a worksheet that summarizes some of these concepts. So how to get teams off to a really good start is to set achievable goals. We just talked about that, but also think about what your team you're on. So are you on a team that's going to meet for years, or a team that's going to meet for 3 months perhaps to accomplish one thing? So you're thinking about what your long and short-term goals are, taking small steps, as I just discussed, to get there. Attend to the group self-efficacy, see how you're all feeling, and if you're feeling confident in your early plans, and then the can-do-ness. So team goals, as I just alluded to, your team may be a team that you're working with in school to just do a project. So clearly the completion of the project well would be the goal, and how you define well might be through a grade or a point system. If you're in the workforce already, what team you're working on, whether it's a provider team with a medical assistant, nurse, front desk, case management, or perhaps a group of people trying to start something. So think about your long-term goal, big goal, trying to begin a nonprofit, trying to create a clinic, or a smaller goal such as trying to redesign one piece of a process. And again, the more specific you can be about your goal, the more you'll know that you are moving toward it. So in a group meeting, in a team that meets repeatedly, and those meetings can be 5-minute huddles in provider teams, or they can be 2-hour meetings once a month, once a week. Typically, these roles exist, and you, with your team, get to decide how you're going to create those. And again, I'll show you a form that will guide you. So are you going to have a leader? Almost all teams, I would say, have leaders. But you can decide how you want to handle this. If that leader is you, if it's a shared role so that each week or month that you meet, the leadership role changes. That can be a little confusing, but certainly an option. You can have co-leaders, two people who share that role, can move back and forth. Just need to be explicit. So you just need to define who it is and how you're going to handle it. The facilitator, similarly, sometimes we have a leader/facilitator who's in charge of both pulling the meeting together, putting an agenda together, running the meeting, but facilitating, so meaning also listening well, including people's voices in the conversation. Often it is better to separate those roles, especially if it's at all heated. So it's good to have a leader and good to have the person who's going to facilitate notice body language, say to one of the members, sorry, I think we just interrupted you, what were you trying to say? Or turn to John and say, John, it looks like you have something on your mind, do you want to share it? That's really helpful as a person who's not the leader, because leaders typically miss some of those cues. They're so focused on the agenda. And then a timekeeper, I'll show you an agenda in just a little bit, that has time increments, which is very valuable in meetings. And your timekeeper can be responsible for noting that we have 2 minutes left, 5 minutes left, we've exceeded the time for that subject. So that's an option, a member option, and again, up to you guys in your teams how you want to accomplish that. And then the members, we're all members of teams, all of us at different times, whether it's our family team or school, work. And it's really important to remember that as a team member, non-leader, non-facilitator, we're still equally responsible for the success of the team. So we don't get to abdicate, don't get to blame the leader for teams that are functioning poorly. One of the things that often is not discussed in teamwork is how decisions are made. And it's critical that that group, sometime early in their formation, consider how decisions are going to be made. So for instance, in my old job, I used to be the CEO type person of a community health center, a sliding fee scale health clinic. And sometimes I would say maybe we were going to take Christmas Day off. I would announce to the group. That's called the authoritative method. I would just say, this is what we're going to do. I didn't ask for feedback. I didn't do that very often, fortunately. A participative collaborative would be me as a leader type person going to a group of maybe you guys and saying I'd like your thoughts on whether we want to open at 8 or 8:30 on Fridays. And I want to hear your thoughts, and then I'm going to go back to my office and decide. That's called participative collaborative. So I'm asking for your participation and your involvement, but I'm still going to make the decision. And often I think all of us have been in meetings or have served on committees where we say after a meeting they asked for input but they didn't listen. So this might be a situation where you want to clarify with the leader, how is my input going to be used? Are you going to take it back to your office, close the door and decide? Or are we, in the next bullet, the democratic method, which I think most of you are aware of, is a voting method. So in a group you can decide to be democratic. It's not actually that common for some reason, but 9 members, if 5 vote yes to go forward with an idea, then that idea goes forward. A fourth way is consensus process. And this is, I would say, fairly common in healthcare, certainly in community health center world, where people are used to working together, like to work in teams, enjoy hearing each other's ideas. So that would be everybody sitting around discussing how we're going to redesign the paperwork for the visit, for instance, or the electronic approach to the visit, where we're going to input blood pressure on the electronic health record. And we would turn to the whole group, all 6 members, and say, is there anybody who can't live with that idea of putting blood pressure in box F? And if everybody says, if nobody responds that I can't live with it, then that would be the consensus that we can move forward. And then laissez-faire, I think we've all been involved in that as well, not usually very effective. In meetings, not clear how the decision's going to be made, if the decision's going to be made, and typically that's very frustrating to serve in those meetings because we're all busy. We want to see things accomplished in this world, and laissez-faire is not very reassuring. So team norms are another thing. I think this is less common that we think about these. How your group wants to function is up to it, and sometimes the leadership that put it together, but often it's the members. So you need to poll your members, whether you're the leader or a member, and say, how do we want to run our meetings? Do we want to start on time? Some people really don't care. 5 or 10 minutes plus or minus is just fine. Other people are insulted by that. Feel their time is too valuable to have that so open. Do we need to end exactly at 4 p.m. or can we go over by 15 minutes? You can ask for permission from a group as you see you're running late and see who can stay. Do we always use agendas? Is it okay to interrupt? I just was creating a meeting at my new job, and one of the norms that one of our members raised and wanted recorded was no use of profanity in meetings, that really bothers him. It's not something I had thought about before, and I could be guilty myself, so it was good to know that was a problem. This is the effective team forming worksheet. So you're welcome to copy this off the slides or to email me, and I'll send you a Word document. And it's great. It's just a great, quick guide to figure out how your team wants to function, what its goals are, what its norms are. It forces you to ask those questions, how you're going to make decisions. And that bottom section is how will we measure that we are achieving our goals, which is really important in this world. It's really important in the nonprofit world. It's also really important in healthcare. And I know that you've heard a lot about measurement, whether it's around diabetes, on diabetic control, hypertensive control, or whether it's about cycle time, how long it takes for a patient from the time they enter a facility to leave. We in healthcare tend to be very inefficient, use patients' time poorly. So important to think how you're going to measure your goals. If you're trying to create a new visit, a streamlined visit, what does that look like? And that last little sentence is how good by when. It's a IHI, Institute for Healthcare Improvement, Don Berwick expression that we won't know if we've gotten there if we don't set our goals and have a timeline, ideally relatively short timeline to move forward. So just to recap some of the things I brought up, and then we'll move a little bit more into creating an effective meeting itself that then drives effective teamwork, is having an agenda with time frames listed is helpful. Listing the goals for the meeting. So we might have the goal for that group our hypothetical group is one that's trying to redesign a patient visit. So the goal for this meeting perhaps is our second meeting. At our first meeting, we filled out the group norms worksheet that I just showed you. At the second meeting, maybe we're going to map out what the current visit looks like. So the goal for that meeting is to create a flow map of the current state. That's just an example. So that would be that meeting's goal. By the end of the meeting, you'll know whether you met that goal. Meetings typically are better if they start and end on time, although again, you can decide differently with your group. Facilitation, if you've decided to do that so that all get heard. And then at the end, recapping what was covered in the meeting and who's responsible. So when I run meetings or take notes, my method is to put people's names in color or boxes so that when I glance through the minutes later on, I can quickly see who was supposed to do what. That's helpful to me. I think most people have either a responsibility guide, action items, some way at their next meeting to make sure that we've actually done what we said we were going to do in the last week or two. And then I'll show you a really fun and easy meeting evaluation tool in just a second. But then I also have a teamwork evaluation tool that is a little meatier and helpful for improving all teams, and also helpful for fixing team dysfunction. So just briefly then on the agenda again, my glasses so I can see this better. So this is just the beginning of an agenda, and I'm going to show you in just a second how a full agenda could look. And again, if you want me to send it to you, just email me. So at the top, you'll see which committee this is for, and this is in my situation. I'm going to show you the agenda I put together for my first team meeting with a group of people who help clinics function well. So it was meeting one. It was our first group to say hello. There's a date, there's a time, there's the location, and then the goal of the meeting. And one really great meeting skill, and again, these are things that come with lots of practice, is to ask the team at the beginning if this is the goal we all agree on. Because often people come into meetings with differing goals, and unless we are explicit in the beginning, people will be frustrated by the end thinking that we were going to do something completely different. And we can change the goal. If I thought it was to form the team and other people said they are a lot more pressing things before we work on teamwork itself, I'd be totally willing to change that. So the goals I had were team formation, and to think together about the good, the bad, and the ugly of forming a team. So you've probably heard the terms forming, storming, norming. And that sheet I showed you in the last slide really helps move right through storming, avoid it completely, and move into norming, which is just highly functional teamwork. So I'm going to move to my desktop for a second here to show you an agenda, and then stay there so you won't get to see my face again, which is probably good for all of us. Sorry, those are my girls. Oops, hold on one second. So here's the agenda that we just looked at the top of. Then you see the goal there. And again, anybody can create this. This is Oregon Primary Care Association uses a standard agenda for all their meetings, which I think is a great idea for organizations because everybody learns. It helps teams function much more successfully if they use an agenda, and this type of agenda is very explicit about what's going to happen. So you'll see the topic that here is a welcome, time frame, who's going to lead that, that's me, and the expected outcomes in each category. So I really like this agenda. I didn't used to have all of these boxes. I didn't have the final one, the expected outcomes for each area, so I think that's really helpful. And then you'll see review goals and agenda. Again, a really critical meeting skill is to go over the whole agenda. Here's what I'm thinking. The goal for today is to form a team. We're going to go through concepts. We're going to look at our plan and timeline, and then by the end of the meeting we will plan our next meeting and do an evaluation. And that's the plus delta piece down here, which I'll go over with you in just a little bit. So that's an agenda. A lot of them out there. You can get online and search agendas and find all sorts of great options. And if you find one better than this, I'd love you if you'd share with me. So we talked about the ground rules for teams. That's what norms. Role clarity. So that was the leader, facilitator, timekeeper, member roles. Running meetings well, just talked about. It's fairly important that you do stay on time when you set up agendas the way I just showed you, because people get frustrated if you don't keep to them. I heard a facilitator recently suggest that you not have time increments because people who are very focused on time will get frustrated, so you're better without them. I need time increments to move through meetings well, so I keep them on there. Encourage feedback, and I think conflict in meetings is one of the toughest things we deal with. None of us are great at conflict as a rule, and I will show you again a tool, but it's great as you hone your leadership and facilitation skills to allow conflict to occur, to listen to people. A great leadership skill is to have something called a bin list, or a there's a lot of different words for it. That a flip chart where you can write down people's concerns. If they tend to sidetrack the meeting, you can write down their idea and say, let's put that on the bin list, and then we can go on with the meeting. So try and allow conflict to come out. Write it down, because people feel heard when they see their words and concepts up on paper, and then move on. So this is a tool for evaluation. Let me just go back. Successful teams, one of the things about high-performing teams is they evaluate themselves. So this is just one really quick way to evaluate a team meeting or any meeting, and I love it. So it's called a plus delta. Plus on the left side, obviously, and delta on the right. The plus is asking the group This is especially important with groups that are going to meet repeatedly. So if you're just meeting with this group of people, 4 to 20 people, one time, and you're never going to see most of them again, unless you're a professional facilitator or leader type, you may not care how it went. But if you're a professional facilitator leader, you almost always care because you want to know what you could do better next time. If it's a meeting that meets repeatedly, and I think a lot of you are going to be on those where you're working to improve something or put a project together or create something, you really want to know what worked today and what can we do better next time. So as the leader, or in our case, we actually appoint a plus delta person in our meetings who wants to do the plus delta. That person stands up with a flip chart or a chalkboard or a dry erase and says, okay, you guys, what worked today? And we write that down. We really liked the way we started on time. The agenda was perfect. Liked the fact that there was food. Everybody contributed. Those are very common responses. Like the energy, like the topics. And then the delta means change, as you probably know. And so what would you do differently next time? So it's not what was good and what was bad. People don't like to be critical, especially openly. So it's better to say what was good and what will we do differently. And I probably should have put that on the slide, what will we do differently next time. So that really allows the group to be fairly honest with the leader and give feedback and say, I wish we hadn't had so much on the agenda, or the way you shared that information didn't work for me, or we moved too fast, or I wish everybody had time to talk, which is often an indication that one person is dominating. And one of the really neat things about this tool is you get to see, everybody gets to hear what others are thinking about the meeting. So one person might be frustrated and hears that everybody else really liked it. Or we may hear that everybody was frustrated, and for the leader or facilitator, that can be a good challenge. So I really encourage every meeting to use this at the end. It takes about 2 minutes. And then at the next meeting, you can start with, remember last time you guys said you didn't want to have this example, you didn't want to spend so much time on team norms, so I've taken it off the agenda this time. Now I'm going to show you, this is my old executive team from my clinic, the health center that I was running in Montana, and we used all these tools. And the woman on the left, far left, is a National Health Service Corps person. So I'm going to show you a team evaluation tool, and then there we go. So let me just make this a little bit better. So this is a form that I can send to you also of team evaluation criteria. It's actually taken from a book, and I'll show you the reference in just a second. But it's a great way to evaluate teams that are ongoing and have been meeting for a while. At my last job, and I'm new to this one, so I haven't done it yet, but will soon, we use this every 6 to 12 months for teams that were ongoing teams. So certainly the executive team in this organization, we would evaluate ourselves every 6 to 12 months. And it asks the tough questions and also clarifies what makes for good team functioning. So are the goals, are they explicit? Does everybody know the goals and objectives, or is there disagreement about the goals? Has leadership been clearly defined, or is it confusing? Some of the things we've just talked about. So that sheet that I shared with you earlier helps you prevent having bad marks on this stuff, helps the team function much better. And then you will see on the second page of it, number 7, intra-team trust. Participants either have a high level of trust in each other and are able to believe that there will be follow-through, or they don't. And teams that have low levels of trust tend to do very poorly in terms of creating the outcomes they desire. And I think we would all understand that. So if you mark yourselves, what you do is you fill this out, give it to somebody who is a objective third party, or if there's a lot of trust in one of the members or the leader, you can give it to that. But often people are reluctant to be honest with leadership. So you give it to some third party, ask them to compile it, average out the score. You can do the score, average, the mean, and the range if you want. So you might put a big X on 4 of intra-team trust, but you might put little X's on 3, 4, and 5, and 6, because that's how it was distributed. And then people can see how the group feels about itself. And if intra-team trust is identified as low, then the leader and the whole team, every member, will be responsible for helping flesh that out. Okay, so we're almost through this. So that is really the full presentation. I know that you'll be taking a few questions to get your CE credits. So those include 2 ways to improve meetings. I think if you look back at the agenda and think about that team forming worksheet, that should make it easy. And I hope you get a chance to practice those because they really make a difference. I think you'll really enjoy your teamwork if you employ those. And then 3 areas that can help teams function well. And we went over those in a few of the different slides. Also, that final evaluation sheet is a great way to help teams function very well. And then you'll recall, I bet, the decision-making, the various types of decision-making, from autocratic to collaborative, consensus, democratic, or laissez-faire. So thanks for being on this webinar. It's fun sharing this information, and I look forward to hearing from any of you who would like hard copies or electronic copies of some of these sheets.